Marvel lost its heroes. Star Wars fell off. Transformers hit the used car lot a long time ago. What happened to these franchises of our youth? We will explore all this and more here on Death of the Franchise. Welcome to Death of the Franchise. My name is Caleb Tancreed. I am joined today by Mitch Leahy, and later in today's episode, we will be joined by Professor Mike Van Essler to discuss the history of franchises starting from 1999 all the way to the present day. All right, Mitch, when discussing a topic like franchises, there are a million places we could start, but tell the audience why we decided to start with the year 1999.
Absolutely. Well, 1999 was the year that really kick-started the current era of franchise films. With the release of Star Wars Episode 1, The Phantom Menace, which would relaunch the Star Wars franchise from a niche audience to mainstream popularity. Followed by Star Wars, we have the Tobey Maguire Spider-Man, Nolan's Batman, the Fast and the Furious franchise. Harry Potter was also released during this time. Transformers also got their start. These were the films that started the current era of franchise movies.
Some audience members might wonder why we aren't talking about the Peter Jackson Lord of the Rings, and the simple answer is the Lord of the Rings was never launched to be a franchise, but a trilogy. Lord of the Rings morphed its way into the franchise territory with the release of the Hobbit trilogy and now the recently announced Gollum movie. Yes, there is the Rings of Power TV series, but that was done by Amazon and not Warner Bros.
Correct. We only have so much time, and we want to talk about the heavy hitters.
Before we get too deep into our topic, Mitch, what was your favorite franchise when you were growing up and why?
Oh gosh. Well, I think my favorite franchise growing up had to have been the Highlander series. The original film starred Christopher Lambert, Clancy Brown, and Sean Connery, and they were all immortal warriors ready to face off to a battle to the death. Now, let me throw that question back to you, Caleb. What was your favorite franchise and why?
What was my favorite franchise and why? Well, we talked about it just slightly, just a minute ago, but Star Wars. Growing up, I was a huge Star Wars kid. My dad introduced me to the original trilogy. I grew up with the prequels. Um, when the 2008 Star Wars: The Clone movie came out and the subsequent TV series, I ate it up. However, the sequels, everything that has happened afterwards, such as The Mandalorian, Book of Boba Fett, The Kenobi Show, I just haven't been a big fan of it. As we said earlier, Star Wars it's been falling off.
So, moving on in our discussion, Caleb, what made those early franchise movies of the 2000s so good?
Oh, what made them good? Well, to put it simply, they were new, they were fresh. It was something that hasn't really been done before. And that's why many of these franchises were so incredibly popular. Um, However, now it's just the same format over and over and over again. And now fans are getting kind of sick and tired of this. I know at least I am. And now it's just time for something new.
Yeah, there used to be a lot of really good variety from like the Mummy series, all the Jurassic Parks, and then just getting some new stuff like reinvented Asian horror movies like The Grudge and The Ring hitting mainstream audiences and building out their own franchises.
hmm So now the question we have to ask is how did the technology play into the success of those early movies? Obviously, we did not have streaming yet, but we had VHS, DVD, and Blu ray. because those revenue streams played a big factor in which movies got made.
And we also can't forget about movie theaters. I mean, they started to have IMAX in a more widespread medium, digital cameras started being used more readily, and then you got to think about like CG elements in a variety of different films, like Shrek, Scooby Doo, Spy Kids, etc.
Hmm. No, I agree. Honestly, I think you stated it perfectly. Before we move on to the current state of franchises, Mitch, in your mind, what was the movie that shifted franchises of the 2000s to the juggernauts of today?
It honestly had to have been 2008's Iron Man. I mean, Robert Downey Jr. was so charismatic. Um, and then all of those pre-existing comic stories and their different iterations being able to be made into films really attracted a variety of audiences, like young kids and all the way up to their parents, who facilitate all the money to go see these movies. I mean, there's a reason why these movies are some of the top grossing movies of all time. I mean, four of them are in this list.
Hmm. And bringing this to present day, Mitch, how would you describe the current state of franchises here in the year 2024?
I mean, I wouldn't say it's in shambles, but you can definitely see a shift in the movie going audience and the industry as a whole. I mean, Marvel hasn't been living up to fans' satisfaction. DC had to restructure and scrap their film division to make something new. Even the Fast and the Furious franchise has seen a slight downfall in box office numbers. And did anybody care about the new Ghostbusters movie in their franchise? And we're just getting so much content. So now with streaming, it feels like every month we have a new show or movie sent straight to streaming services. Are we getting too much content?
Yes, I would argue that we are getting too much content. Um, it seems nowadays in the era of quantity versus quality, Hollywood has been going the more quantity route instead of having those quality shows and quality TV, hold on, quality movies that we loved so much. And it truly is unfortunate. I know myself and many other fans would like to go back to that more qualitative era where TVs and movies had more interesting plot lines and the CGI was actually good. However, the more Hollywood just goes this current route of quantity, I don't think that we're going to be going back to that anytime soon. And closing this out here, where do we think franchises go?
Well, I think there's going to be a continuing of pre-existing IP already. I mean, look at the success of Barbie. It's based off of a toy and did gangbusters at the box office. So just kind of going off the heels of that and Transformers, maybe just dipping back into the toy franchises a bit. I mean, look at Dungeons and Dragons. I mean, that was a huge success, and see where that's going.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. All right. We have to take a quick break, and when we come back, we will be joined by Dr. Mike Van Essler. Stay tuned. Welcome back, everyone. As we continue our discussion on franchises, I thought it would be a good idea if we brought Dr. Mike Van Essler. He is a professor of media studies at the University of Wisconsin-Oshkosh. Dr. Van Essler, thank you for joining us today.
No problem. Glad to be here.
So, why do you believe that franchises have become such an integral part of Hollywood production?
The short answer is these are multi-billion dollar companies that are heavily risk averse, and franchises are pre established IP. is a simple way for them to bank a certain amount of money off of any project that they start on, as opposed to starting something new that is risky.
And how did franchises affect the focus of these films?
So I think they've shifted the focus from a general audience towards more specifically the fans, and making sure that they do what they need to satisfy fans, because that's the core audience. Those are the people who are going to go not just once, but 2 times, 3 times, 4 times. This is how, the Marvel movies, at least prior to the recent ones, were bringing in billions of dollars at the box office. They don't rely on people going once; they rely on people going multiple times. And so you start catering more towards fans, which maybe changes the output of the films towards sort of more niche knowledge, and maybe you sort of alienate the general audience at a certain point.
Interesting. And how has streaming impacted the franchise model over in Hollywood?
So streaming has, and you've already mentioned this earlier, but has increased the amount of television programming and films that are being produced. Although we've hit the point of peak TV, the streamers are cutting back on how much they're spending. But with all of this need to generate new programming, for instance, so Disney Plus, right, has a bunch of Star Wars shows, a bunch of Marvel shows. They needed to get all this programming out to generate new subscribers, and you can't just do it once a year. You have to have multiple shows coming out throughout the year. So you've got this fire hose of content coming out just to satisfy subscribers so they don't unsubscribe, so they remain subscribers, or you can also sign up new subscribers. So I think it's watering it down a little bit.
All right. And next up, how do you think the writers and actors strike of 2023 affected the output of big franchise films and shows?
I mean, I think it affected everything, not just the big franchises, but the main effect is obviously nobody was working on anything for about 6 months there, which meant studios started pushing back release dates. So Dune 2, which came out, I guess, 2 months ago, was supposed to have come out last year, got pushed back. That happens like all the time in strikes. So it hasn't necessarily just been franchises, but it's pushed everything back. The slate's been reduced a little bit. Hollywood's cutting spending, so you're going to see a reduction in budgets, I think.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Van Essler, for joining us today and providing your insights into franchises.
No problem.
Are movie franchises alone in their struggles? Video game companies have come under fire for spending too much. Oh, I'm sorry. Sorry about that, folks. Video game companies have come under fire for spending too much on game development with poor results. Now, many people think, are video game companies struggling with the same thing movie studios are struggling with? Now, many
Uh,
people, when thinking about this,
well, I think there's a lot of similarities going on, especially since like big video game companies like EA have been kind of rehashing the same type of sports properties for the past, I don't know, 15, 20 years, just with slightly updated graphics and rosters. So I think there is a little bit of fatigue with those properties.
yes, I would agree. Now, I want to thank everyone who tuned in and watched our show today. I especially want to thank Dr. Mike Van Essler for being a part of our show. Mitch, as always, it has been a pleasure. Take care, everyone.